society which wishes itself well neglects its educational system and all its component parts.
President Buhari on preventing disruptive strikes, perhaps on commitment towards honoring promises made to us.
As low-income earners who cannot afford continually pay their rent, engage in measures which are illegal or unlawful.
Senate moves to regulate mode of payment of rent on residential apartments in FCT.
And northern leaders meet in Abuja over issues of insecurity in the country.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the regulation of private schools in Nigeria.
Let's begin on a very positive note. The validity of success is like two sides of a coin. The belief in some quarters is that behind every successful individual, there are also some teachers who are instructively a form of motivation, instruction, and of course, personality development.
In fact, others consider teachers as more important than what they teach. Now, this perhaps encapsulates Albert Einstein's conviction that the supreme act of the teacher is to awaken joy in creative expression and knowledge.
Well, unfortunately, as it turns out, for specifically 5-year-old Hanifa Abubakar, the concept of an instructor became a nightmare when her supposedly school proprietor and teacher at her school in Kano abducted her on the 4th of December 2021 and consequently murdered her in cold blood after collecting 6 million naira ransom from the girl's parents.
Now, the incident and what many have described as the height of inhumanity has sparked outrage across the country, with some residents in Kano touching the school and calling on the government to ensure quick dispensation of justice.
And following that call, the Kano state government swiftly revoked the certificates of operation of all private schools in Kano with a definite instruction for revalidation of certificates, while also announcing the arraignment of the particular teacher, Abdul Malik Mohammed Tanko, before a court of law. In fact, the government also says it will not waste any time to assent to the death warrant of the suspect.
That is, if the court reaches such a decision. Now, while Nigerians are still trying to recover from the shock and come to terms, as it were, with the unfortunate Kano incident, another schoolgirl, this time 8-year-old Asmau, was reportedly kidnapped and murdered in similar circumstances in Zaria in Kaduna State.
Indeed, the narrative is undoubtedly tilting towards a sad reality. The rise in school-based violence, a system that negates the federal government's guidelines for establishment of private schools in Nigeria, which also stipulates, among other requirements, adequate safety for measures for students.
Now, in times past, it was strictly the prerogative of educationists setting up schools. But in recent decades, we have seen, of course, on account of decline in funding for public schools, a rise in private schools, of course, who are enabled to do so by way of licensing by the appropriate authority, namely state governments.
So inevitably, this has led to proliferation of private schools in parts of the country, characterized, with uncontrolled activities, and some education watchers are raising pertinent questions on what is exactly obtainable in establishing such private schools, what is the systemic framework for regulating those schools, in Nigeria. And in this direction, some states, like for instance, Niger, Edo, Rivers, and Lagos states, including the FCT, have also had to read route acts to private school owners.
Indeed, the tragedy of Hanifa and others have become an eye-opener to some of the unwholesome practices in some private schools in the country. Just clear, it isn't just some of these incidents about safety and security of the pupils and wards. The infrastructure in the first instance, sometimes you have a single-story structure that is labeled a private school with insufficient playgrounds, with poor fire evacuation and prevention measures, and indeed poor quality of instruction, because the teachers they have, they don't pay them well in some of the instances, and several others. And some of them are also poorly fed, by the way, particularly in the primary schools.
You know, Kingsley, you're even going too far to talk about fire prevention facilities in schools. I rarely see, you know, those kind of, you know, facilities in any of the private schools. But again, as you rightly said, private schools need to be supervised. I remember in those days in private schools, you had playgrounds. We used to have what we call ferry ground. And ferry ground is where you spend your leisure, your break time. You know, we also had courts. You had basketball courts. You had all those areas for recreation. But that is absent.
Absolutely so. That what should be the checklist for the establishment and regulation of private schools. Those issues and more will form part of our conversation today as we look at the regulation of private schools in Nigeria. We shall also take a brief look at the change of name of the Premium Times Center for Investigative Journalism to the Center for Journalism Innovation and Development. It's on that note, welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak. Our program is reaching you live on the network service of the NTA and, of course, our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. We will have our complimentary segments in the course of our program. But for now, let's join Dennis Adegunloye with the morning news, and he's all smiles.
Yes, thank you, Claire. Good morning, and good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here's the morning news. A 62.1 billion naira HIV trust fund has been launched by President Muhammadu Buhari. He said the initiative is in furtherance of his administration's efforts at prioritizing desired interventions towards addressing killer diseases and public health emergencies.
Threat in Nigeria will require increased domestic funding. We have continued to make good our commitment of placing more people living with HIV on treatment annually using national resources.
The federal government says it remains committed to honouring promises made to the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, towards preventing disruptive strikes, engendering uninterrupted academic programs, and improving funding of educational institutions. President Muhammadu Buhari made the pledge while receiving members of the Nigeria Interreligious Council, co-chaired by the Sultan of Sokoto, Alhaji Mohammed Sa'ad Abubakar, and the President of the Christian Association of Nigeria, Reverend Samson Ayokunle.
System and all its component parts. Therefore, we must value our custodians of knowledge while demonstrating that indeed the service they render in the shape of molding our students to grow into valued and productive members of our society.
The Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, chaired by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, had a comprehensive meeting on agro-exports and came up with a 60-day plan to look at the various challenges facing the sector. The Vice President, after receiving the reports on issues surrounding agro-exports, said there has to be a complete reorientation on the exercise of the regulatory authority in the country in order for businesses and investors to thrive in Nigeria.
We presented the report, and it has been decided that the PEBEC will now look at ways of implementing the report. such that necessary steps will be taken to make business easier for these exporters and importers.
The Senate is considering a bill that seeks to regulate the mode of payment of rent on residential apartments in the Federal Capital Territory. The proposed law has passed second reading.
As low-income earners who cannot afford continually pay their rent engage in measures which are illegal or unlawful.
Even those who are homeowners, there is no use somebody struggle to pay you the first one and subsequently you are dragging almost every day.
Is whether it is just to ask the clerk of the Senate, whose salary is not up to 800,000 or maybe 400, to pay.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives wants the Nigerian Customs Service to pay 20 million naira each as compensation to families of those that lost their lives following alleged shootings by customs operatives in Oyo and Katsina states in 2019. The said killings occurred in some border communities of the two states when the operatives opened fire while in hot pursuit of smugglers.
It happened at the border station. That is between the smugglers and customs. It's understandable. But when they are allowed to come inside market, then you go inside the market, you start, definitely innocent people will be affected.
Traditional leaders and notable figures of northern extraction have made a case for a more sophisticated approach and other fundamental considerations to tackle the persistent rise of threats to lives and property in parts of the region. This was the outcome of a high-level stakeholder security summit aimed at adopting a clear security roadmap towards salvaging the region from the state of insecurity and other socio-economic challenges.
We felt we should do something more serious, taking into consideration the serious challenges we are facing in the north. We looked at what can we do, what should we do to once more offer our suggestions and recommendations to the appropriate legal authorities in our country and in the north.
Well, that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria, with Claire and Kingsley on that topic of regulation of private schools comes up after this break. Promises to be interesting discussions. Good morning.
Lagos-Ibadan Railway is the first double-track standard gauge railway to be built in West Africa. The Mobolaji Johnson train station is a masterpiece, an infrastructure that is gradually becoming an iconic building in Lagos State. The modern facilities put the station on a world map of train stations. Likewise, other new train stations across the country built to world-class standards. The train and its convenience is indeed an admirable effort, with commendations from Nigerians.
This is a station that we have to commend the federal government for putting a beautiful face, empowering us in Lagos State, not only in economic and political arena.
I can say that I'm really impressed with the infrastructures in place. Kudos to the Minister of Transportations. Kudos to the federal government.
Truly, good things are coming out of Nigeria, and the federal government is deserving of all the applause.
Everybody knows the secret to good cooking is that special ingredient. The mothers know it, but does this new generation know it? Let's find out. Mothers, daughters, are you ready? Yes! Let the cooking begin.
Erisco tomato paste. Now we get home, now we get love, now we get children. We spice the world with a meal so great and so healthy. You know we've got with Erisco, Rigico, Nagico.
Ladies and gentlemen, food is ready.
Food of love. Tomato paste. Good food for the body. Yum yum for the body.
Erisco Rigico and Nagico tomato paste is made by Erisco Foods Limited, feeding Africans with healthy foods.
To the right. Bila, you go to your left. Thank you for the rejections. That taught me to keep striving. Thank you for the long hours. That taught me discipline. Thank you for the knockdowns. That taught me to bounce back. And for the unexpected victories, that taught me to never give up.
Please welcome Dr. Succeed.
Thank you for making me who I am.
Big day ahead.
New Ovaltine 3-in-1. Smart choice for smart kids.
Contemporary times require practical skills to remain competitive and relevant in your organization. Therefore, take advantage of NTA TV College Short Proficiency courses to sharpen your professional skills. Computer Appreciation for Media Practitioners. Date 21st February to 28th February 2022. 1 week. English Grammar and Pronunciation for Broadcasters. Date 1st March to 25th March. 4 weeks. Administrative Principles, Processes and Practices. Date 11th March to 31st March 2022. 4 weeks. Modern Trends in Broadcast Media Marketing. Date 14th March to 13th April 2022. 4 weeks. Basic Broadcast Accounting and Auditing. Date 4th April to 19th April 2022. 2 weeks. The course fee for the 1 week course is 100,000 naira per participant. The fee for the 2 week course is 150,000 naira, while the course fee for the 4 week course is 180,000 naira only, accommodation inclusive. The venue for all courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA TV College, near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. For more enquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, training you to be the best you want to be.
All right, welcome back to the program if you've just joined us. And now let's talk business. FX, that's Nigeria's commodities market player, says it is planning to raise $175 million, of course, to bridge the funding gap between lenders and borrowers of the agro-processors' low-cost financing. Let's join Alika Okmanache Arwa for the details.
The new funding target is the second in 3-year commercial paper program that started in the last quarter of 2021 and saw the sum of $65 million raised during the period. In its attempts to ensure adequate supply of funds in the Nigerian agriculture sector, it said it is seeking to raise an additional $175 million to allow for processors to borrow in the commercial paper markets. Chief Executive Officer, AFEX, Ayodeji Balogun, pointed out that the exchange has a strong track record in offering distinctively differentiated and innovative financial instruments to the marketplace, noting that the new asset-backed commercial paper will help bridge the gap between agro-processors and investors, especially as access to low-risk funding and capital is critical to empowering Africa to feed herself. Meanwhile, oil prices edged higher on Tuesday, trading near 7-year heights as investors bet supplies will stay tight, with a limited production hike by major oil producers and a strong post-pandemic recovery in fuel demand. Brent crude for April delivery was up 14 cents at $89.40 a barrel. The front-month contract for March delivery expired on Monday at $91.21 a barrel, up 1.3%. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude rose 13 cents to $88.28 a barrel, having gained 1.5% in the previous day. With business news, Alika Okpanachi Arwa.
Thank you very much, Alika, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Up next is Newspaper Review.
And let's quickly introduce Bayo Atoyebi, who is already here with us. Bayo.
Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Kinsey. Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you.
That's right. Yeah, we have two papers, Blueprint and the Punch, to review this morning. Let's begin with the Blueprint. Blueprint says arms proliferation and hard drugs threat to FCT polls. That's according to INEC. Pledges to assist security and rules out boot party in Ekiti. That's on the front page of the Blueprint. 2023, Atiku meets IBB, promises to declare soon. Currency circulation reaches highest level of 3.33 trillion naira, December 2021. El-Rufai cries out to Buhari, that's the kicker for that lead headline, says, give us Northwest Theater Command to tackle terrorists. Says 50 kids, 1,142 others killed, and 3,348 kidnapped in Kaduna 2021. Another writer insists there's nothing like repentant bandits. And gunmen kidnapped Tinubu's loyalists and 4 others in Ekiti. No more coup, Buhari assures Nigerians. Olubadan, coast clears for Balogun as court OK's selection process. How we are addressing Apapa gridlock, and that's according to Sanwo-Olu, Governor of Lagos. Buhari launches 62 billion naira HIV trust fund. And World NTD Day, 4 million risk contracting elephantiasis in Zamfara. Claire.
Yes, indeed. Let's take a look at the Punch. The lead story says, marketers Labour warns as federal government pushes refinery repairs to Buhari's successor. It is on page 2, but it comes with 2 riders. No subsidy removal until refineries are working under next government. That's attributed to Silva. Now, without repairing refineries, fuel price hike imminent, say marketers fault prices, policies. Again, you can read up that story on page 2. And screening of 2021 applicants into the Nigeria Police Force at the FCT Police Command in Abuja and Lagos. Of course, that was on Tuesday, and that is the picture story you are seeing right on your screen. Stories trending just beneath that. MFLA inaugurates 15 billion naira rice processing factory in Kano. It's on page 24. Now, U.S. resumes no interview process for Nigerians seeking visa renewal. Page 8. Obasanjo fumes over fire in Benue farm. Autumn orders probe. It's on page 8. Now, Kaduna lists 1,192 killed in 2021. El-Rufai insists terrorists must die. It's on page 11. Bandits kill XLG administrator, kidnap schools in Kaduna villages, page 5. And reps recommend 390 million naira compensation for customs killings in Oyo and Katsina. Let's take a look at stories up above the masthead. And Buhari mandates Gambari Ngige Adamu to resolve ASU crisis, begs lecturers on page 9. Wike dodges questions on presidential ambition, says window still open. It's on page 12. And oil revenue plunges as Nigeria misses January OPEC quarter is on page 17. Now, convicted millionaires 2.7 billion naira fraud approved by Orosanye, says EFCC. It's on page 11. And finally, 22,000 mother-to-child HIV transmissions recorded yearly, and that's according to NACA. Those are the stories. Let's now turn to Bayo for his review of some of the main points.
Let's start with looking at the federal government's pronouncement yesterday that it is committed to honoring his commitment to the Academic Staff Union of Nigerian Universities so as to stop any disruptive strikes for academic programs. The president stressed this to a meeting of the Nigeria Interreligious Council that visited him. The president said that he has enjoined the Academic Staff Union to take cognizance of the physical limitations of the government. The president indicated that he has directed the Chief of Staff to the President, Minister of Labor, and Minister of Education to prioritize resolving all outstanding issues. On the usage of UTAs instead of IPs, he said a system assessment report has recommended that the Academic Staff Union will have to make some modifications. The president of the Christian Association of Nigeria, Dr. Samson Ayokule, said that NIREC raised this issue so as to stem any disruption of academic activities. Meanwhile, the Northern Traditional Rulers Council have also attributed increase in all terms of criminality and a threat to security to poor implementation of security policies. Speaking at the Northern Stakeholder Security Summit, the Sultan, while calling on for proper solutions, called on all and sundry to support government by having all hands on deck. The Sultan said there has to be diligent prosecution of all suspected criminals, lamenting that some of them are released on bail. They either go back to the criminal terrorist activities or go to threaten persons who had exposed them. Governor Simon Lalong, who is the chairman of the Northern Governors Forum, also lamented that insecurity, kidnapping, sporadic attack, and terrorism, assassination, as well as armed robbery, has led to the loss of lives and property, displacement of people, and also accentuating poverty in the land. He called for the strategy between government and security agencies, as well as citizens and traditional rulers, to reverse the situation whereby crisis merchants bring misery to the doorsteps of people on the highways in the country. And the stories that Kingsley and Claire read about the statistics in Kaduna, Kaduna State government has called for the creation of a theater of commands to tackle insurgency emerging in 5 northwest states and Niger State forests. Governor Nasir Rufai, while reviewing the 2021 Kaduna State Annual Security Report, indicated that in 2021, an average of 9 persons were kidnapped across Kaduna daily. This was also prevalent in Kaduna Central. Also, 255 persons were killed by bandits and criminals in 2021. He also expressed dismay over escalation of ethno-religious strifes in Zangu Kataf, Chawai, and Kauru local government. He acknowledged that efforts of the security in tackling the issues. However, he urged the military, police, and other security to coordinate and intensify kinetic operation to decimate the terrorists. He says there is no phenomenon like repentant bandits. Any persons making conscious decision to take up arms against Nigeria's state and threatens life and property should not be spared. They do not deserve to live. The other stories of concern relate to the development yesterday when an ultra-modern 420 metric tons of rice mill factory was inaugurated in Kano. This was the Gerawa Rice Mill. The Central Bank Governor, Godwin Emefiele, described it as a commitment towards food security in the country. He urged partnership with Rice Farmers Association and millers to sustain supply of paddy rice production so that we can meet that mantra of growing what we eat and also eating what we produce. He stressed that the quality of rice milled in Nigeria matches those produced any part of the world. Prior to the introduction of the Anchor Poruwas program, Nigeria, he says, had 10 functioning mills. Currently, there are 60 integrated mills, and by the end of this year, another 10 will be coming on stream. I think these are positive developments, so that now the rice paddy that we are beginning to see in the pyramids can now find their way to rice mills where they can be milled. And it should trickle down to bring down the prices of Nigerian produced rice in the market so that Nigerians can eat rich, well-produced rice in Nigeria.
That is what the Yorubas will say. That's the kukoro.
In fact, the president puts it this way. He say, whatever we produce, let's see it on the ground, Buganshi Akasa, in the market, so that when the price should come down.
Well, I want to refer to the lead story of the Punch newspaper, which was taken from our program yesterday on Good Morning Nigeria, when we had the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum. Now, the headline and some of the writers would tend to be misleading, but if you read the details of the report, the details are accurate. What the minister said was not that the next administration will be the ones, to complete the reproduction, to complete the rehabilitation of the refineries before the refineries start producing. He said that there are milestones. That is to say, over a 3-month period, this is the percentage of work that would have been completed on the rehabilitation of, say, Port Harcourt refineries. And that by the end of this year, the target is to achieve a minimum of 60% plate capacity. In other words, if a refinery is primed to process, say, 100,000 barrels of crude oil per day, at 60%, it means that it will be in a position to process or to refine 60,000 rather than the 100,000. A refinery is a complex, no question about that. It's not just only petrol that comes out of a refinery. So it is the different stages of the rehabilitation works that says, look, if we are unable to complete it before we leave, that's to say the current administration, of course, government being a continuum, the incoming administration will inherit it and then take it over from there. I think that point is important to clarify. Okay. In other words, the pressure should be on those who are working on the rehabilitation of the refineries. If you achieve your milestones and if refined products start coming out of those refineries, let those products be in the marketplace. Yes. Because we have about 11 months to the end of the year anyway. So.
Yes. And this administration has about 15 to 16 months to end. But if you look at the program of the rehabilitation of the refineries, they are 22 months, 23 months, and 33 months.
That's right.
And so that spreads it across.
That's right.
So it has nothing to do with this administration or that administration. It is the program timelines to get the refineries back into work.
And once there is a contract, there is a contract, you honor the terms of the contract.
And it should be monitored diligently to ensure that, yes,
absolutely,
the terms are compliant with.
The other story, we didn't have the opportunity of discussing it yesterday.
So this, again, is misleading.
No, I didn't say that it's misleading. I'm saying that the details...
The impression is created that the refinery product...
That is not, but the details provided in the story, inside, those details are accurate. It is just the fact they say that the administration is pushing it to another one to complete before we start getting products.
This is why we always say that the headline must always reflect the body of the story.
Now, the other story, which we didn't have the opportunity of discussing yesterday, we didn't even raise it, has to do with the arson on an orchard somewhere in Benue that is owned by former President Olusegun Obasanjo. It's said to be a mango farm. Now, it is immaterial who owns the farm, whether it's President Obasanjo or whether it's Kingsley or Bayo or Claire. Arson on tree crops and indeed on farms is one of the most serious agricultural offenses anybody can commit. You know how many years it would take for you to grow a mango tree and for the mango tree to begin to produce. And of course, for the fruits to be harvested and utilized for whatever purposes. And it was also reported that as firefighters tried to put out the flames, they were resisted by the arsonists. So it's one of the most serious offenses because it can be a source of hunger and famine in an environment. You can say it's a mango tree. We're talking about, we're praising rice paddies and so on and so forth. Suppose somebody decides to set
of a mango processing
I don't know. Let's not get into into that. Or what tree crops and so on and so forth. So it's the duty of the Benue State government. The governor has said that they will go after whoever did it and so on and so forth, whether the principal actors or the conspirators. Take them in and prosecute them swiftly. Let justice be served.
Arson is a crime of deliberately setting fire on property. So anybody who has done that deserves to be sorted out and prosecuted accordingly. But the concerns here is that heavy gunfire were reported at the capital of Guinea-Bissau yesterday. And there were concerns that they were targeted at a place in the presidential palace where the president, Umaru Embalo, and the prime minister, Nuno Nabam, were holding meetings. There are indications that it may not have succeeded, but the worry is that it is becoming recurrent. They're having a queue in Guinea, in Mali, Burkina Faso, and now Guinea-Bissau. The West African sub-region is having this resurgence of the criminality that dominated the political landscape after most African nations gained independence. And this is time for, it's not enough for ECOWAS to say they will not recognize and they disavow the coup. There has to be stern measures to stem this growing development.
That's right, Bayo. The ECOWAS has taken measures in terms of ostracizing those rogue regimes in the various locations that you have mentioned. The Guinea-Bissau coup has been crushed, according to the president. But it's worrisome that the epidemic of military takeover is getting back on the African continent, more particularly in West Africa, and that was always notorious for that. So, Bayo, thanks a lot for being around today. See you again tomorrow. It's Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we shall be dealing with the regulation of private schools in Nigeria.
The Nigerian aviation sector is rapidly growing with the construction of new international airport terminals in several regions of the country. The new Murtala Mohammed International Airport has an estimated passenger increase of 30 million annually and 15 million for Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja. Malam Aminu Kano International Airport is also expected to open new frontiers for the region with more travel capacity for the annual Hajj, while the new Akanu Ibiam International Airport, Enugu, avails more business opportunities connecting the industrial cities in the region to the world. These new terminals beat world-class standards with enabling infrastructure that aid air travel, tourism, and the eventual growth of the country's GDP.
Open up commerce and, of course, link us to international societies.
People from international community will come here to do business, and then that will bring in more revenue to the state.
Now, distances can be seamlessly covered as Nigeria keeps raising its bar to suit global infrastructure standards.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Ibrahim, to the right. Bila, you go to the left.
Thank you for the rejections that taught me to keep striving. Thank you for the long hours that taught me discipline. Thank you for the knockdowns that taught me to bounce back. And for the unexpected victories that taught me to never give up.
Please welcome Dr. Succeed.
Thank you for making me who I am.
Since coming into office in 2015, the Buhari administration has recorded unprecedented achievements in all sectors, especially in the provision of infrastructure, which is the key to economic growth. Never in the history of this country has any other administration done so much with so little. I recall that when this administration came into the office, the price of crude oil, which provides for 80% of Nigeria's budgetary revenues and 95% of foreign exchange earning, dropped drastically, thus reducing the amount of resources available to the federal government. In spite of this, the administration has continued apace with massive infrastructure developments.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Arise, O Nigerians! Let's applaud the courage of Flight Lieutenant Abayomi Dairo, aka the Aggressor, for his skillful and dogged escape from the bloodthirsty bandits in the forest of Zamfara State. 3 hearty cheers also to all military and security personnel who are tirelessly protecting fellow Nigerians from insurgency and banditry while maintaining peace and order. Nigerians are proud of Abayomi Dairo and all our gallant men and women in uniform for sacrificing so much to keep us safe. We admire your courage and we say thank you. God bless the armed forces. God bless Nigeria. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, it's time to commence our conversation. And today we're looking at the private schools and how they might be regulated. And of course, you know, the prompt for our conversation, the incident that happened to the people in Kano State. And of course, there have been so many, many others in different parts of the country. But let's listen to the background compiled by Uyemi Ajayi for starters.
The establishment of private schools in the country is meant to create an alternative choice of education aside the public schools. Over the years, more private schools have emerged with millions of students said to have passed through them, owing to the fact that public schools are not enough for equitable access to education in the country. Some of these schools have been adjudged one of the best citadels of learning in the country due to the quality of education churned out on the pupils, making them competitive with their contemporaries around the world. Expected of an appropriate private school in the country are physical building structure, conducive classroom and environment, quality teachers, health and sanitation, amongst others. Sadly, over time, some of these qualities have been found missing, with questionable characters and nefarious activities surfacing in some of these schools, raising the question if they are adequately regulated. Aside this, the standard of environment of some so-called private schools are said not to be conducive for learning, not forgetting the unqualified teachers. Not only this, some heinous activities have also been prevalently recorded in some private schools. Worthy of note is the kidnapping and killing of 5-year-old Hanifa Abubakar by the proprietor of a school in Kano State, which raises not just an eyebrow but questions awaiting to be answered. This informed why the Kano State governor had to shut down all private schools in the state for appropriate regulation.
We, Private Schools Association, we distance ourselves from this proprietor or principal or whatever he calls his name. He is not our member. We don't know him, and he has not registered with association, and we don't know who is he. So whatever happens, and we are 100% supporting whatever the judgment comes from the court.
Expecting from the authority, and what we are reminding them is justice. As this incident goes through the world all over, they should know that the punishment should fit the crime.
Some have asked if the private schools in the country are still regulated. Also, what quality of teachers should be recruited to teach these pupils? How best can private schools be regulated? What penalties are issued to some of the schools found operating below the appropriate standard? And these are some questions guests on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will be answering shortly.
Thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that backgrounder and interviews that we heard from some of the respondents. Joining us to discuss matters arising, let's welcome Alhaji Sani Dahir Katuzu, Secretary for Education in the Federal Capital Territory. It's a pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Pleasure too.
Also here with us in the studios this morning is Hajia Samira Jibir. She's the former chair of the School Proprietors Association of Nigeria and currently CEO Gliston International Academy, also in Abuja. Hajia Samira, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers.
And we also have joining us from Ibadan, Adeolu Ogunbanjo, Deputy National President, National Parent Teacher Association of Nigeria, NAPTAN. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Good morning, Nigerians.
And our next guest is joining us from Maiduguri, and he's Engineer Lawan Wakilbe. He's the Commissioner of Education, Borno State. We'd like to appreciate your presence with us, Honorable Commissioner.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Once again, we welcome all our guests. In particular, we are glad that Mr. Adeolu Ogunbanjo is with us again on Good Morning Nigeria. We had him late last year when we were discussing the unfortunate incident involving Sylvester Oromoni at Dowen College in Lekki Phase 1. So, Mr. Ogunbanjo, once again, a special welcome to you. You are the National Parent Teacher Association of Nigeria. Now, our topic, of course, relates to the regulation of private schools. And the first question will be, look, why regulate private schools? What is amiss in the operation of private schools? Let's begin with the former national chair of the Association of School Proprietors of Nigeria. We know that private schools have proliferated in recent decades on account of the decline in the quality in public schools, nursery, primary, and secondary. But there are concerns now that you are having probably a lack of standards, and that's why we're having some of these issues, including, more prominently recently, the incident in Kano that saw to the murder of 5-year-old Hanifa. What's happening to private schools? Are you just playing on your own without a referee?
We can't be playing on our own without a referee. I must say that it is so sad, and we are not happy as a group that are working very hard to complement what government is doing in the education sector and to bridge the gap. Unfortunately, in every sector, you have miscreants, you have people that will misrepresent the things that people are doing. And we have disassociated ourselves with that particular school because we are not even sure if the school is our member. It's not our member from our records. Again, it is so sad, and we really empathize with the parents. And the picture that is being painted about private school is grim. However, certainly, we assure you that there are regulatory bodies, especially in SCT, and we and I want to believe it is so in most cases. But it's unfortunate that things happen with some people not complying with regulations. I think that is what is happening.
All right, thank you, Aja. We'll just pause it for a while. And I want to direct my question to the national president of the NAPTAN, National Parent Teacher Association of Nigeria, Mr. Ogunbanjo. You've listened to Hajia, and the impression I get is that all is well within the association. They're not happy with what is happening, but within any of such incident, the association, dismisses the schools or the proprietors' membership and all that. From your interaction, what do you think is happening? What do you see, really?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, let me express our heartfelt condolences to the family of murdered Hanifa, a young girl who just was murdered in cold blood. Very unfortunate. So, to the question, I must say that, yes, denying the man, the proprietor, is on one hand. But on the other part, let's look at who should actually, register a school. It's all right when, in registering a school, we're looking at infrastructure, what conducive classrooms and all that. There should be a code of conduct to the personality that is actually establishing these schools. Hanifa's case is one hand. There was another video that went viral in a school, I think in Kwara, where some ladies, because they went to a party or something of their colleague, of some students, they were beaten mercilessly, publicly. It was so bad as well. That is also a school. I mean, that should be, for now, I think government, beyond the infrastructural provisions and all that, laboratories, conducive classrooms, the fields of play and stuff like that. The personalities behind, these schools, who are they? What is their pedigree? Are they educationists? Are they worthy to actually establish a school? I think those are the issues for now that should be in the discourse. Who are the people that should register schools, that should establish schools?
I don't know if you have interaction with pupils, and I'm sure you do, but in the course of coming in contact with pupils or students, are there things they tell you, that speak to the character or the conduct of, the teachers, and that give you concern?
Yes. Sometimes when students complain, really, you want to wonder, okay, what this complaint, should I have to go back to the school when the student complained to you as a parent at home? Of course, some schools have parent visiting days and things, but sometimes you need to, the moment you have a complaint like that, you need to now go to school. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's a visiting day or not. You now need to go back to school and, look at this sort of complaint and find out from the school. But beyond that is the fact that the conduct of teachers themselves sometimes is questionable, because the school, particularly private schools, some of them do not actually recruit qualified teachers, I must say. Whereas in government schools, a lot of, 80-90% of them are qualified. But it's the reverse in private schools. So sometimes the quality of teachers and the conduct of teachers, again, needs to be questioned. So, and by the time you now look at the personality of these teachers, that are teaching, our children, again, you still need to focus more on who should be teaching, in these schools. There's a lot to talk about.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Gubanjo, for the two points that you have raised. One has to do with who can establish a private school, and then the other is the quality of the personnel running those private schools. It is clear that you cannot regulate nothing. In other words, a school has to be in existence before it is regulated. So let's get the benefit of the contribution of the two government officials who are here with us, the Secretary for Education in the Federal Capital Territory. What are the criteria for the establishment of private schools?
Well, thank you. Let me start by sending my sincere condolences, heartfelt condolences, to the families of Hanifa and the government of Kano State, and also the victim of the incidents in Doyen College and that of El Kanemi College of Islamic Theology. These incidences really touched the hearts of Nigerians. They were unfortunate. Here in the FCT, I believe it will be difficult for us to experience these kind of incidences because of the kind of regulations we have in place. We have a whole Department of Quality Assurance, which is charged with the responsibility of inspecting and monitoring schools. And with that, they do registration, they license schools. And that is done after thorough investigation of the school proprietors and the teachers and even other administrative staff that they employ in the schools. Of course, we know that there are certain individuals or individual proprietors that may like to cut the corners in the regulations, but because of the constant appearance of our quality assurance department in the field, we have been able to catch a lot of them and shut them. And even very recently, I had interaction with the Honorable Minister of FCT, who gave me this backup to not shy away from shutting any school that will affect quality of education in the FCT. So what we do actually in the FCT is that we are in constant supervising and monitoring activity of all the schools around. We have a lot of schools. It is a very small school place, but we have a lot of schools in it. And of course, the influx of people coming into the federal capital always have stretched the system such that all kind of players have entered the educational, let's say, industry. And most of them come in as businessmen, not as educators. Educators will definitely come in with that zeal and feeling to provide that service that is essential for the development of a society. But businessmen come in, provide business goods, not minding what the outcome is. Now, in the FCT, we are doing everything we can to see that even if they come with the intention of doing business, they must have to abide by the laws, the regulations. We have a whole booklet that sets out the guidelines on the establishment and operation of schools within the FCT. And I can recall at least one clause in it which says, clause 3.7, I think, says that school administration should be responsible for the safety of children or students or pupils under their care. Now, that we adhere to strictly, and we take all measures. In fact, it has gone to a level where we interview, we interact with even the staff, the teachers, to ascertain whether they are of the right quality or right caliber to be in our schools.
You know, Secretary Sonny, yes, you're talking about regulation, which is fine.
Yeah.
I would still like you to focus more on the criteria for establishment. Can I, as Kingsley, or my colleague, as Claire, wake up tomorrow being Thursday and God granting us life to Thursday? I said, no, I want to set up a school next door to NTA headquarters here. Can I just do that? What do I require, and what would you require of me to qualify to set up a school. Maybe I just have one small clearing there, have a little hut, and say, you know, Kingsley International School.
No. It doesn't happen like that. One, we are very particular about the environment you set up a school. Two, of course, we are not particular about the proprietor, because if the proprietor is not assigned a teaching subject or a role to play within the school, we don't actually mind who proprietes. But we are more concerned about the headship of that school, the teachers in the school, and those who work within the school compound, because they are the ones that have direct impact on the pupils and the students. So one, we make sure that anybody that is employed to teach in our schools has qualified. That is to say, for the primary school, he has to have an NCE certificate. For the secondary school, he has to have a degree in education. It's not only you have your degree in physics and because you cannot find a job somewhere, we come and employ you and make you a teacher in our secondary schools. No, you have to have that education or qualification before you are employed as a teacher in the FCT. Now, you have to have that kind of qualification to be a principal of a school, whether private or public. Of course, we have some people who try to play against the rules, you know. But anytime we catch them, we make sanctions. We take measures that will definitely correct the situation. The regulation in FCT is that without education background, you cannot have direct contact with our pupils and students.
Madam Gatuso, you just said something, which caught my attention. You said you really do not bother about who the proprietor of a school is. Of course, because you probably will not come in contact with the students. But somehow, does it mean that you do not also bother about the psychological disposition of the proprietor? Because even the case in Kano, was the proprietor of a school. So do you just allow anybody and anyhow to run a school, to own a school, to administer a school?
Well, honestly, we don't have any specific regulation that that specifies the qualification of the person that proprietes the school. We don't have. I'm sorry, that may be one default or whatever, but we don't have. But what we feel is that the person that has most impact on pupils and students is the teacher, the head teacher, the teacher that comes in direct contact with them. And it is expected that whatever the disposition of the proprietor will definitely have to come to the school through the head teacher, the headmaster or principal, or part of the school system. You cannot come and have, his psychological disposition may influence certain decisions, but definitely I don't remember if we have any regulation that says no. But we are very particular about where you set up schools. Like the presenter said, if he can open a school at the back of NTA, no, you don't do that. There are places where you establish schools. There are places where you can't. You can't just go to the market area and start opening a school. You cannot go to, say, a station or something like that. You have to look for a place that is suitable, because the environment plays a very serious role in the teaching and learning process. So we are particular about the environment, the location of schools, and the rest of it. But like I say, even if it is an oversight, which we have to revisit for the future, I don't think there's anything particular, there's anything clear about the proprietor.
Well, thank you. And also thank you for acknowledging that perhaps there is a gap in not profiling a proprietor before granting a license for the operation of a school. Assuming the proprietor is a fraudster, assuming the proprietor is an undischarged bankrupt, a drug peddler, a terrorist, or a bandit, and El-Rufai says there are no reformed bandits, you give him a license to operate a school? So those are issues, of course, that we'll return to. Let's go over now to our Maiduguri Network Center, where we are introduced the Commissioner for Education. That's Engineer Lawan Wakibe. Engineer Wakibe, let's also have your input into the criteria for granting operating licenses to private schools, say in Borno?
Yeah, in Borno, it's like the same with the FCT. The only difference between, I overheard the secretary, the only difference we have is that for you to get a license to operate a private school in Borno State, our education edict states that you must have an indigene of good standing to be your partner, especially when you are. But if you are known and you have a repute and you are an indigene, you could be accorded the license to run a private school. And that is primarily there to now hold somebody responsible in an event things happen. That is the situation in Borno State. But then, there's something unique about Borno State that I want to highlight. Our situation is a bit different with the rest of Nigeria because we operated what was called the education under emergency. To give you an understanding of what that is, somewhere between 2013 to 2015, 17 out of our 27 local governments were taken over by insurgents, forcing about 2 million people to be displaced into Maiduguri, the state capital. So all government infrastructure, especially schools, were overstretched, and that gave access to the private schools to have a lot of students, and it allowed for proliferation of private schools because at that time, our concern was just to create access, and our concern was on security. But later on, when His Excellency Professor Babagana Umar Zulum came on board, the return strategy for Borno State started. And when the return strategy started, it ran to 2 years. Most of these displaced people were returned. Then the government now noticed that it had so many private schools. Then a high-power committee was put in place, and they will soon submit their report so that we will now see and categorize and begin full regulation of private schools. That is our situation in Borno State.
All right, Engineer Wakibe, thank you. Before I bring in Ajay Samira, I just, beg to bring in Mr. Ogubanjo back into this conversation. And we've been talking about the requirements for registration. And I know that registration would, cover issues like, infrastructure and, of course, provide the environment. But when it comes to issues of security and safety of pupils and students, obviously there is a big gap in this because most of the incidents that happened, apart from the school in Kano, the other schools were duly registered members of the association.
Thank you very much. I must say that majority of proprietors look at establishing a school as a business, not as a social service. And that is a problem. Again, government, unfortunately, is not actually happy on the personality that should actually establish a school. Now, students are going to be, admitted and all that in the schools. How safe are they? 1, 2, the environment, is it conducive? Yes, government is usually focusing on that. But what about the teachers? The orientation, you see, because the proprietor has a lot to play. He will recruit, he will recruit the teachers, and then the people or the teachers he or she recruits as a proprietor will impact directly on the students. And if his orientation is, to just make business, or like someone in the studio said, if he's a terrorist or something, it will now impact, gradually, what he wants the school to be. So, which is not safe for the student in question, the students that will attend these schools. So, a lot should be focusing, the government should be focusing on, one, the proprietor that is establishing that school, what his motives are. I'm glad that the Borno Commissioner for Education talks about partnering, knowing someone. If you want to establish a school, according to him, he says that you must have an indigene, that you will trace whatever that is wrong. If the Hanifa murderer has somebody in the state that could, check, that they can check with or cross-check with, that is something. So Borno State is a good example. So the personality of people who are establishing schools must be strictly scrutinized, as well as all the type of the quality of teachers that they are recruiting.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ogumanjo. While we're still on that, Hajia Samira, let's talk about the profile of an intending school proprietor, and once the school is then established, who that proprietor is. It is not intended to be a sweeping statement that all proprietors are necessarily on the negative side, but the issue, as has been raised, is that a number of proprietors of private schools come in with a profit motive. In other words, this is business. There are educators who say, look, what we want to provide is a social service. We don't get grants from anywhere, but we'll give you the very best, and then that goes on. What mix do you have in your association of school proprietors? Do you also try to self-regulate?
The self-regulation that we do is more of advisory, because nobody has given us the power. And today, if you are trying to regulate somebody, it tells you, most of the time it's competition. You are in this business, I'm in this business. That's the way it is viewed. However, I must say something. The fact is that the education profession has been so bastardized and infiltrated with so many people, because most people, even in government schools, when people cannot get work, they don't even want to, even as educationists or those that have studied education, they take that as a second opportunity or as a stepping stone. So until we start as a society looking at what education means to us and the passion that is attached to it. Again, in all profession, the TRCN is there to regulate the personality of teachers. And if we're proprietors, you should have that qualification. But again, is it a matter of the certificate qualification or a matter of the value system, the moral system? Unfortunately, we are so hypocritically religious in this country, but morally debased in values. Unfortunately, even in the medical field or industry, you have quacks clinics springing up. But for us, what we have been able to do, especially I take the case study of FCT, in all honesty, like the secretary has mentioned, the Department of Quality Assurance is there. And we work together with an understanding. And when things are coming, they let us know. I recall the time that I was on board as the lead of the association in FCT. And FCT, they listed some schools, so many, that needed to be closed. Yeah. Yes, and they sent the list to us. And when we looked at it, and we look at what are the accreditation myths that those schools have, and we as an association, our members, like 6 or 7 of them, we rose to the occasion to ensure they meet the standard required. However, standards are standards. Again, even the populace is not about the regulatory body, it's not about the school proprietors. Even we as parents, we have a duty to cross-check the type of schools we are sending our students to, our children to. You have to cross-check who is there, what is the pedigree of the person. So it's not about government doing everything for us. All of us, it is a communal effort, communal responsibility that we have to do in this country.
You know, Hajia by Samira, you say that sometimes self-regulation is an issue among private school proprietors because you are in competition with one another. The question then will be, is this healthy competition or cutthroat competition?
What I'm not saying that we are, but that is the way most people see it. It is not a competition, cutthroat competition. For instance, for the association, we meet, we had conferences, we have capacity development for our members. We have so many things, even the CSR to the societies. We do that. But what I mean by that is that some, especially mostly, those that are coming from the business angle, I'm here, I want to make money. That is all. And in most cases, we have the two categories of these schools. We have the very highbrow schools that are untouchable. Okay. If somebody up there is setting his standard, his school, what can me or any other member do? Again, you have those people there that they just want to be there and they feel that they can just make money out of this thing. But we do our best to ensure that we empower members.
It's quite unfortunate that, today teachers are associated with, acts like killing, kidnapping, and even rape. And all that. It's really quite unfortunate. We never used to, have that. It's unheard of. But the discovery I made is that most of these teachers are in the private, employ. You rarely hear of such incident associated with teachers in public schools. So is there a nexus between what we're talking about, the environment, the structure, the facilities, and this kind of characters, this kind of behavior?
Well, I wouldn't know, like I earlier mentioned on, pockets full of individuals like that are everywhere in the society. But the fact is that when the proprietor or proprietress knows his onion and is not socially there, let's be frank, whether we call it social service, it's still business in a way. Because you have to take loans, you have to pay all the regulatory taxes and levies, you have to maintain the school, and you still have to keep up with whatever.
Take loans from whom?
From banks.
Commercial banks?
Yes, commercial banks. No grants. I wouldn't know any proprietors that have not done that. Taking loans, 26%, 24%.
Loans to do what? To hire teachers? Or
no, to build or to keep the school. Even when you want to buy bus, you have to take a lease. It is on 20-something%.
You know why I ask, Kinsley?
Yes.
Because in public schools, teachers rarely, you rarely hear of such things. And I want to believe it's because there's a system. There's a system of check and balance. There's a system of monitoring and punishment, which is absent, and among the private schools or among the association. How do you reprimand an erring teacher in your association?
You see, there are certain different schools. For instance, I'll give an example of my school. We do security checks on teachers coming in. Police security checks. We have people like the secret shoppers that find out about where teachers live. Again, going forward, the referee, like Bonuk's Commissioner of Education said, when you have referees for proprietors, for us, we have referees for our teachers. And the moment you come in, you ensure that the referee is connected, is contacted. In most cases, we even discover that The referee is just there. We can't reach that person. So we don't give that employment. So those are the things that we must start putting in place as individuals, schools, to ensure that we do that. Again, there is handbook, the manual for staff. And it is there, the regulations. They have what they've given us from DQA, and we merge it with what is obtainable to our situation. And then we ensure that each staff has that. You read it like your Bible and your Quran. But unless we start putting processes in our schools, but how many of them? The last conference we had was huge here. The representative of the Honorable Minister, the Secretary for Education then, was there. We had over 1,003 coming from all over the country. And the essence is to ensure that our members actually know what and what to do in certain circumstances, in terms of curriculum, in terms of the new things that 21st century learning, in terms of even managing ourselves, the stress. You can't say you are taking loans all over. You can't do what you cannot pay for. So you have to know what you are capable of. And that's what happened to the proprietors that was looking for money for accommodation. Although sometimes we have also the problem, not sometimes, most of the time, of parents not paying school fees. They owe, and you still have to run the school. What regulations? I don't know. But for some people, they do what they cannot and they run into problems. So ours is to mentor, to encourage one another, to do the necessary thing in terms of following the regulations, and to also ensure that we keep abreast. The main purpose, the main thing, is the education of the Nigerian child. It should be the first and foremost in our hearts, whatever we are doing.
Okay, Ajia Samira, thank you very much. Mr. Adeolu Ogunbanjo at Ibadan Network Center. Let's return to the role of the Parent-Teacher Association. I mean, quite clearly, it's to ensure that at the end of the day, the ward, the children who are in those schools, whether nursery, primary, or secondary, get the best out of education. And we should also clarify this, that there are top drawer private schools in the country at all levels. But we have also fringe schools where the rules, of course, are usually head more in the breach. But I'm just wondering, Mr. Ogunbanjo, is this now going to be a matter for the Parent-Teacher Association, this is a national body, to begin to consider? You focused again on the profile of a proprietor and even the mode of operation. Now, we know that there are some schools that are run as trusts, so you have a board of trustees. But some of these fringe schools are just one-person businesses. And it's kind of challenges that you find with one-man proprietorship is a kind of challenge we also find with some of these schools where, teachers are scared or workers in the school are scared of standing up to the proprietor to insist on standards, and the proprietor just does whatever he likes. And the consequence is part of what we have seen in Kano and elsewhere in the country. Mr. Ogunbanjo.
Thank you very much. As parents, quite honestly, some of us do not actually follow up our children. What do I mean? We must regularly check our children in their schools. One, yes, there are parents visiting days and things like that. I think it's once a month. Some schools do PVDs once a term. I would want a situation where, one, it will be parents must be alive to responsibility. Some parents will say, I don't have time. Mommy and daddy, none of them will go. Some of us are faulty, even as parents. If we check regularly, that means we are keeping tab on the school, how it is administered, I mean, how they are treating our children. Beyond that now is the fact that parents should ensure that at least once a month they visit the school, the teacher, and the head teacher or principal, as the case may be. And if it's a proprietor-driven school, we want to also see the proprietor. Who is he? That is, if it is not the, I mean, if it is the, if the proprietor is not the principal or head teacher. Now, again, rather than, again, the Borno experience, rather than just one referee, 2 referees will just be fine. Maybe as a board of trustee or something, 2 referees before you can, you know, establish a school. At least if Hanifa Modra had, you know, referees, I'm sure he wouldn't have, you know, done what he did, because he knows that they are going to hold the 2 referees responsible. So I must say that parents, yes, one, we need to constantly ensure that we, you know, go to our children's schools at least once a month, ask questions from the teacher, meet the head teacher, and perhaps, you know, if need be, the proprietor. Again, governments, they have monitoring, compliance and monitoring unit or monitoring departments. When I know that some of these government monitoring departments, you know, in Ministry of Education, they visit schools, even private schools. Unfortunately, the moment they get to the school, the proprietor, I'm sorry, does 1 or 2 things, and they do not really go through their records deeply and find out the personalities, the teachers, more about the teachers. So government should strengthen the monitoring departments to ensure that they actually visit these private schools, of course, also public schools as well, but more of private schools now, to ensure that they monitor them and profile all the teachers on a regular basis, and also the head teacher. So government should strengthen through, through the regulation processes, ensure strict monitoring of private schools. Thank you.
Ubanja, I'm sorry, you are the unbiased or unbiased eye here, or mind. So that's why we are asking you most of these questions. Ajia here is a proprietor, chief executive, and others are, of course, officials of government. But I remember a similar incident in Lagos, you know, in one of the, this time, you know, public schools, public secondary schools, where a head teacher was also accused of, you know, sexually harassing a student. I know there were initial rebuffals, there were initial denials, you know, but the old students rallied up, and the matter was not swept under the carpet. I think at the end, that particular teacher was, you know, I think redeployed or sent out of the school. I don't know what eventually became of him. But the point being made is that action was taken, and that is in a public school. But I rarely hear Proprietors Association, you know, coming up, except for the case in Kano, coming up to either, you know, deny or condemn any incident. The several incidents that have happened, we didn't hear either the Parent-Teacher Association, you know, say anything or take a stand. We didn't hear the Proprietors Association take a stand. Why are they always shielding their teachers when they are involved in cases like this?
This is rather unfortunate that you want to, something is wrong and you now want to cover up. That is the, well, people say the Nigerian factor. But there are some of us who will just say, sorry, that Nigerian factor stuff will not work here. we need justice for this particular incident. This particular case must not be swept under the carpet. Again, it boils down on monitoring. For instance, the Proprietors Association, look, Hajia in the studio had said that it is a competitive world, you know, they are in. And the moment, and they don't want to run down each other. But it is government that should be the impartial arbiter. So government should ensure that from time to time, their monitoring departments monitor these schools. Let them strengthen their monitoring and compliance department to ensure that these schools are definitely monitored strictly. But unfortunately, again, the Nigerian factor comes in. Hopefully, I think all of us need, clear orientation in this regard. No Nigerian factors should come into play, particularly when it comes to our children, their schooling, because that is their future. It is a social service, and we need to also guide it, and through government, this can be achieved.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ogunbanjo, for your explanation. Just to indicate, as we said earlier, that there are a number of private schools that are well run in the country. We recall that a couple of years ago, again in Lagos, there was a case of indecent assault by a teacher on a pupil. And that matter was taken up. It was widely publicized. That teacher was tried, sentenced, and is in jail right now. So that's an indication of what happens. I mean, I don't want to get into the details of that, but you do recall that that incident happened in Lagos in a private school, and the school authorities didn't try to shield the teacher. He had to face the music, and justice was served. Let's return to Maiduguri, the Commissioner for Education in Borno. Commissioner for Education, I wouldn't know how long you've been at your post, but I imagine that there is the National Council on Education where some issues normally will come up, and I presume also that the next meeting would have elements of what we are discussing right now, either as a principal item, major item on the agenda, or as AOB. But I was just wondering, look, in terms of, again, the criteria for setting up schools, land is a primary factor, but some of the private schools you will see in different parts of the country, these schools are located in cramped conditions. And in urban areas where land is scarce, you find them having multi-story structures, poor ventilation, hardly a room for the children to play. And then you also worry about the safety and security in any emergency. And yet, those schools continue to advertise, admit pupils or students, and then the government appears to look the other way. Why is this so?
Well, you know, the education law is domiciled and is unique for each state. We don't very much have these problems in Borno State. But what I want to tell you is that we are taking a regional approach on the issue of private schools. At the instance of the Northeast Governors Forum, where His Excellency Professor Zulum was the chairman, all the Northeast Commissioners of Education came, and we are drafting we are reviewing and trying to harmonize our education law. Section 7 of that draft calls for the establishment of an entire directorate for private schools, and other aspects talks about harmonization of the law. But I won't want to preempt the law until when it is fully adopted at Northeast level, and we now want to extend the whole thing to the Northern Nigerian Governors Forum, so that it will be a kind of Northern Nigeria law, so that we will have the same law operating. Prior to that, like I said, each school had its own edict, which is in tandem with the federal government law. In my own state, land is a requirement, playground is a requirement, emergency muster points are requirements before you set up a school. It's not enough for you to just set up a school as a proprietor. Your license has to be granted by the government for you to commence. Not only that, like I said, you have to have a partner who is an indigene of good standing. If you, the proprietor, is not an indigene of known standing, you have to get somebody responsible. And it's a requirement for each school to have school-based management system. But in any case, private schools are usually categorized into A, B, C. The A grade are those who have everything and are operating almost at the ideal level. The B grade are those ones that are coming up. The C grades are those ones that are illegally operated. Most of the time, C grades are usually given time to improve on facilities or they are closed down. So like I said, after the stabilization phase of our education system, a committee came on board, and the committee would soon present its report, and we are going to roll out our plans for regulation of private schools within the state. But very, very soon, even before the of Education meeting, the Northeast Commissioners of Education Forum will roll out their own plan. Eventually, the Northern Nigeria Commissioner of Education Forum will also adopt that. Then we will have the same law. When we have the same law, it's easy to regulate, but law differs according to states.
Thank you very much. Let me just take a quick question to Malam Katuzo. I still want you to, within the context of our conversation, what should be the role of the Parent-Teacher Association?
Well, as parents to the children and partners to the school administration, the PTA should be able to assist us by one, checking, like somebody has suggested, on the kind of schools they send their children to. Be able to report to us anything they find shabby or anything they don't understand operating in the school they send their children. Now, if they do that, they will be assisting us to take measures to remedy whatever is happening in the schools. Let me say that a lot of things have been taken for granted in the educational system because of the population explosion and the large number of children we have that we have to provide educational spaces for. Now, but these incidences, unfortunate as they are, would definitely galvanize all stakeholders in the educational system to come up with lasting solutions. Otherwise, in fact, there are places where I know there isn't any regulation. Anybody can come and establish a school anywhere. And the government will be grateful because the government cannot provide the spaces required by the system. So these challenges that have emanated of recent, you realize all of them between last year and this year, will definitely force us to take measures that will be lasting. I hope various forums of education will come together and not only provide laws that regulate school establishment of schools and the rest of it in a section of the country, but for the whole country, because this is a national issue. It happened in Lagos, it happened in Maiduguri, it happened in Kano. I believe there must be incidences in the southeast and south-south. So it is a national problem which actually calls for all to put hands on deck.
In years past,
yes.
You always had the AIEs who inspected the primary schools, AIE being Assistant Inspector of Education, yes. I believe. And I was quite excited listening to the Commissioner for Education from Borno talk about the proposed creation of a directorate yes. of inspection, if you like, or an inspectorate directorate yes. for private schools. Yes. Now, this was something that we never had in the past. But if that is coming on, then we also have to worry about the performance of such an inspectorate division or department. Because, as Mr. Ogubanjo mentioned, so that it is not reduced to mere visitation and an opportunity for a shakedown You know what I mean? To say that if you don't comply with X, Y, Z, our demands, then we're going to offer, a report that is unpalatable, to your institution. What is it that we have, say, the FCT now, that can graduate to this kind of inspectorate division that actually goes out to monitor and insist on standards?
You see, like I said, in the FCT, we have a directorate for quality assurance, and that directorate takes care of both inspection and monitoring of schools.
Private and public?
All private, both private and public. Now, it is when you want to create a department that takes care of only private schools, then that is what we do not have. Our own directorate takes care of both private and public schools, and I'm sure they are doing a good job at it. That is why we have not been having incidences around the FCT. But let me see. Don't be too excited about incidents not happening. There is an incident in the school at Lugbe. That story is still on, and the activists are taking up that story. So that story is on, and I think the family is still crying for justice. But please continue. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is that if this issue of creating that directorate specifically to tackle private schools has come up, we'll examine it and see where we, maybe, even if we don't give it a directorate, the Directorate of Quality Assurance should have a specific area which takes care of private schools, and we give them specific instruction. And like I said earlier, we do not have any specific regulation looking at the proprietor of the school. What we do actually is to check on the teachers, the head teachers, and all of them that are within the school environment. Now, I think there is a wake-up call here, which necessitates that we go back into the drawing book and do something about that, because like I said, education has been taken for granted. It is most of us just feel, okay, we have gone to school, we have gone to elementary or primary or something like that and graduated, we feel we can operate a school.
Madam Katuzo, thank you very much. Let's just pause you and take a short break. When we come back, we'll conclude this conversation.
The ever-busy ancient city of Onitsha is a commercial hub with millions of commuters seamlessly linking other states daily for business, leisure, and other purposes. To upscale its road network, the construction of a 1.6-kilometer long second Niger bridge, including a 10.3-kilometer highway furnished with other infrastructure, has been in motion by the federal government. This project will ease congestion on the existing 56-year-old Onitsha bridge and boost the economic capacity of the state as it easily connects to other parts of the country. The completion of the world-class second Niger bridge Onitsha will be one of the many proud moments of the state, its people, Nigerians, and foreign investors. Onitsha, which hosts the largest market in Africa, is geared up to boast of an impressive road network. Once again, these moments are made alive by the federal government, and it is deserving of all the applause.
We've been trying our best to contain the situation, and in our operations, we've been able to make a lot of recoveries. We've been able to also arrest suspects that are involved in this kind of activities, and we've been able to also recover particularly arms and ammunition from those who are carrying it unlawfully and disturbing the peace of the people. But generally, our morale in the Nigerian police is always guided by our commitment to do what we have sworn to do. Peace and security must be looked into as a priority by all. To look at security as the business of all of us.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
We are all all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who's a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
To the right. Mila, you go to the left.
Thank you for the rejections. That taught me to keep striving. Thank you for the long hours. That taught me discipline. Thank you for the knockdowns. That taught me to bounce back. And for the unexpected victories, that taught me to never give up.
Please welcome Dr. GC.
Thank you for making me who I am.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service. I'd like to direct my question just before we round off to Ajia Samira. Whether we agree or not, the girl child is most vulnerable. Is there anything we can learn? You know, you are a chief operating officer of a private school. Is there anything we can learn from you in terms of, you know, further safeguarding, you know, the students and the people, especially the girl child?
Like I mentioned, there is the handbook, staff handbook. The policies are there. And if any teacher goes contrary to that, there are sanctions. The students who have their sanctions, their rules and regulations and sanctions. And the moment you do that, you know. Again, the bringing up of parents. Like I said, what we have pact, what we call pact. Partnering and caring together. The school and the parent must work together. Constructive criticisms. We have open doors. Again, like Mr. Ogunbanjo said, these days, digital age, you don't need even to start going in because of the logistics and everything. There are apps that give you reports. Like now, our inter-house sport is ongoing in my school. But the parent just clicking on the app, they can see everything. And from seeing that, you could even say, something is going wrong here, and call. And at any time, it is there that any teacher or head of school or management team, even in the night, when you call us, we answer you, including myself. So those are the things that we need to put in place, working together and ensuring that this thing works. It's not about the grandiose policies, printing them, keeping them, but implementing them and going all the way to ensure that this works for all of us.
All right. On that note, we'd like to appreciate Hajia Samira Jibir, former chair of School Proprietors Association of Nigeria and currently CEO Gliston International Academy here in Abuja. Thank you very much for being our guest on this conversation.
Thank you for bringing me.
Alhaji Sani Dahir Katuzu, Secretary for Education, Federal Capital Territory. Thanks also for being our guest.
Thank you very much.
We'd like to thank Mr. Adeolu Ogunbanjo, Deputy National President of the National Parent Teacher Association of Nigeria. Mr. Ogunbanjo, a delight having you once again on Good Morning Nigeria. And from our Maiduguri Network Center, we were joined by the Borno State Commissioner for Education, Engineer Lawan Wakilbe. Engineer Wakilbe, thank you for being on Good Morning Nigeria today.
And all right, let's move on to our second topic. Earlier on, we told you that a non-governmental organization deploying investigative journalism is changing its name. And you will say, what's in a name? Right now, we have joined us in the studio to elaborate more on this, the Acting Chief Executive Officer, Toby Oluwatola. Toby Oluwatola, we'd like to appreciate you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, of course, what we're dealing with here is the Premium Times Center for Investigative Journalism, which has now had a name change, now known as the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development. Toby, why the change?
Thank you very much. So Premium Times has existed for about 11 years now, and the Premium Times Center for Investigative Journalism was created about 7 years ago to respond to a need in the journalistic space, which was at the time a dearth of investigative journalism, but also declining revenues for the journalistic enterprise. And it served that purpose for a while, but over time, in the bid to serve that purpose, we've realized that our remit has to be beyond just investigative journalism, but also really delving into how we can leverage the technology ecosystem to improve journalistic business models, improve how we produce content, distribute content, and finance content in a journalistic enterprise. And as we've evolved, we've realized that what we do goes beyond the remit of just investigative journalism. What we do today involves a lot of innovation and a lot of development work, and which is why we've decided that the name ought to reflect what we do, which is journalism, innovation, as well as development. Because we realize that the journalistic ecosystem, the role of journalism in democracy is really threefold. Number one is setting the agenda, setting the development agenda. Number two is bringing together a public sphere to really address and define what development means, with different points of view coming into play. And the third is acting as a watchdog. And with our new transformation, our goal is to really support all of the journalistic ecosystem across West Africa, starting in Nigeria, Ghana, Gambia, Sierra Leone, and Liberia, to do better journalism that does these three things that are the roles of journalism in democracy.
I started off by asking, the usual question we ask, what's in a name? And I know your earlier or your core function within your the name capture deals with growing or investigative journalism in Nigeria. Now that you're changing your name, I'm wondering, is it just a change in name, in nomenclature, or are there implications for this change of name?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. So we will continue to do and support investigative journalism across the region, because we think that investigative journalism continues to be an important element, especially when you think about the accountability aspect of our work. And a lot of our work will still continue to be investigative journalism. But we don't just do investigative journalism. It's important that we highlight other important elements of our work, which include innovation. We're consistently building civic technology tools that enable and increase the ability of the journalistic enterprise, not just Premium Times, which is our sister organization, but the entire journalistic enterprise. For example, we've built a tool called leaks.ng that essentially we've got about 15 journalistic enterprises that collaborate on that tool to come up with, to really help whistleblowers from all across the spectrum to contribute what they think that we should investigate. And when those sorts of demands come, we don't execute them only through Premium Times. We execute them through any member of our coalition. And that coalition can continue to grow. We don't intend to keep that door closed. We've built a tool called Udeme that basically allows citizen reporters, the everyday person on the street, to go on the platform and report on how, so there's a capital project in your constituency that doesn't seem to be going to plan. Can you report on it? And then we, one of the members of our coalition can pick it on as a story to do further investigative journalism on. But without the innovation that went into creating that tool, without the technology that went into that, the investigative journalism that follows wouldn't have been possible. So it's important that we really emphasize that a core part of our work, our work is no longer just investigative journalism. And because we really want to, also, it's important that you're able to attract the right talent.
And blow your trumpet.
Absolutely. If you cannot, if your name doesn't say what people want to go work for, what the technological talent doesn't want to go after, then they wouldn't come, and we need them.
Well, Toby, clear this for us. You're now the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development,
Absolutely.
or is it Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development? Is there a comma between journalism and innovation?
That's a good point. There is no comma between journalism and innovation. There's no comma between journalism and innovation. So our innovation is still largely in service of the journalistic enterprise.
All right. And then in saying this, tell us, what does your center focus on? Is it teaching, training, and research, or more? And if so, what is the more?
That's a good question. So we certainly focus on teaching, research, and innovation. We certainly focus on that. A big part of how we measure our success as a center is how many journalistic and civil society entities that we're about to equip with skills to do the things that we think they should be doing. But we do a little bit more than that. So we've got about 7 programs. One core program it focuses on journalism as an industry.
Toby, we are hitting now. You need to round it.
Okay.
Where is your center based? Is it
we're
multi-located or where?
We're primarily based in Abuja, but we have an office in Ghana, an office in Sierra Leone, we have an office in Lagos, and we have an office in Liberia, in the Gambia.
Acting Chief Executive Officer Toby Oluwatola of Center, I want to get it right, Center for Journalism Innovation and Development. That's
correct.
The new name. Thank you very much
correct.
for coming. And that's our Good Morning Nigeria for today. We thank you for watching as always. Always remember that the fight against rape and rapists is on. Do join us. I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo.